Hi, I'm Ty Preiniger, a technology facilitator in Mesquite ISD, and this is a tutorial for the mapping of U.S. history about the American Revolution. So this is lesson 4 of our mapping project. So to get started, what you're going to need is the handout for our kids, and it looks like this. Make sure they have an instruction sheet so they can see all the things that we're going to need to map today. There's quite a few. Because this is going to cover some causes of the American Revolution, events and battles of the Revolution, and then the Treaty of Paris, so the after effects of the Revolution. So make your way to our map. And the last layer we did was French and Indian War. And so I need to add a layer to my map, change the name to American Revolution, save it. And then I want to make sure that only the American Revolution is checked, and I have my blue bar next to it so I know that anything I add to this map will be on the correct layer. So the first thing our instructions tell us to add are markers for the following places: English Parliament. So I know that Parliament was England's lawmakers, and they're located in the capital at London. So I can go ahead and search for London. I'm going to click Add to Map. Remove these extra details, and I want to change the name to English Parliament. And then it says that we need to add a description about Parliament's impact on the colonies. They're going to have a huge impact on the colonies because of the laws that they pass. Because this is England, I need to change the marker to a red icon, because anything that we do with England will always be red. And then the next marker I need to add is a blue marker for France. And I'm going to make this in Paris, France, the capital. Again, I'll add it to my map. And I want to change the name to France. And it's going to stay blue. For this description, I want to add information about Marquis de Lafayette. And he is going to play an important role during the American Revolution for the colonist, or for the American side. So just leave that there, and then we'll come back to him and add some information whenever your class gets ready to learn about him. So we have England and France. We know the Revolution was fought between America, the colonists, and the British. So the French are going to come into play later. We want to review something that we did during the French and Indian War, because this was a lasting effect and cause of the American Revolution. So I'm going to use my Add a Line tool, and I'm going to add a bold red line that represents the Proclamation of 1763. So I know that that was kind of roughly along the Appalachian Mountains here. Probably went down on into Georgia. I'm going to end that line and name it. Going to save it and make it red and bolder. Remember, that's the King and Parliament said that colonists are not allowed to settle west of this proclamation line. So the colonists started to resent that. And that was in 1763, after the French and Indian War. We're going to make another line, and we're going to start it in London. So where Parliament is, we're going to click one time, and then we're going to end the line at the top of the proclamation line. So it's one huge curved line. And our paper says that we need to name it the King's Attempt to Control the Colonies. And technically they are his colonies at the time. He does own them. We again want to make that red. And so this should look like, if you go back and look at your French and Indian War layer, you should have the same thing. But like I said, this is going to be have an impact on a war starting. So some of the first events that we want to map are some things that happen to kind of fuel the fire towards war. And so I'm going to add the dates. You don't necessarily have to add them, but I want to show you how time played a factor, because we are in the 1700s. It's going to take a little bit longer for things to happen. So the first thing that we're going to map is the Boston Massacre site. And this is one where I can actually start typing Boston Massacre, and the exact place where it happened will show up. So there it is at the Old State House in Boston. I want to add to map. I'm going to remove these extra details. And it says that we want a blue circle marker to be there. So the reason we want it to be blue is that's going to be the color that we're going to use for our colonists. And if you want to make it a little bit lighter blue than the French, that might be a good idea. But we can't use red because anything red is going to be British. So your teacher will have you add your own description for the Boston Massacre site. I'm just going to tell you that 5 people died there, including Crispus Attucks. And I'm just going to add that this was in March 5th of 1770. So this whole time I want you to think about how the colonists were feeling after they were told that they can't settle west of the Appalachian Mountains. And now we have British soldiers who, through the Quartering Act, are living in these people's houses, and they don't like their presence there. And so that's going to lead to events like the Boston Massacre. The next event that we're going to map is the Boston Tea Party. And again, we can type in Boston Tea Party, and let's pick the one that says the party ships a museum, because you can actually go to Boston and see a reenactment of the Boston Tea Party. Going to add it to my map, remove the extra stuff, and change the title just to where it says Boston Tea Party. I want to add a date here for you. Again, you don't have to do this, but just to give you an idea of how long it took things to develop. This is in 1773, so 3.5 years later is the Boston Tea Party. This would be a great time to add a picture if you have time. There's some great videos on this, but you can see pictures of the Sons of Liberty dressed up as Mohawk Indians and throwing that tea overboard. And I want to point out that actually we need to make this a circle marker, but the same blue circle. But look, it's right here on the water, and I guarantee you that these ships right here are probably reenactment ships. So if you wanted to go up to Boston and see that, that's where you could see them reenact the Tea Party. So several other things like the Tea Act, Quartering Act, Sugar Act, all those laws and things that Parliament passes are going to, help cause the war. And so kind of the first battles of the American Revolution are Lexington and Concord. So we're going to map those separately. I'm going to type in Lexington, and we want the one that says Lexington, MA, for Massachusetts. Going to add that to my map. And we need to make that a red battle marker. If we go to crisis, there is a battle marker for you to choose. It's the one called explosion. I'm going to make that red because the British actually kind of overpowered the colonists there, but you can use page 173 in your book for a good description. And let me go ahead and add the date for you. So if the Tea Party is in 1773, it was another year and a half before this first battle of the Revolution took place on April 19th of 1775. We always put Lexington and Concord together. Remember, these are nicknamed the shot heard around the world happened here. So I'm going to search for Concord, Massachusetts. It should be just down the road, right? We know the story of Paul Revere making his famous ride. Add it to our map. And for Concord, we're going to make that a blue battle marker, and it should have saved it down here for us. Because the colonists were a little bit more successful there at Concord, chasing the British soldiers away. So you can see the proximity of how close these things were. They were just outside of Boston. So I'd be curious to know, why did it kind of happen here and not so much in the city? That could be something that you're going to talk about. And that was the same day, so again on April 19th. A year later, so at this point, the Continental Congress is going to meet a couple times, and I believe at the Second Continental Congress, they're going to meet up in Philadelphia, and that's in Pennsylvania, so search for Philadelphia. And actually, we can search even better, not Philadelphia. Let's search for Independence Hall. So that'll give us a specific place of where the Congress representatives from each of the colonies met up. And they met up at this building. I'm going to add to map. And this says that we need to make it a gold star. Let's make it a yellow star so we don't get confused with Spanish things. Philadelphia was kind of the capital for the colonies at this time. And it says for our description, we want to talk about the Continental Congress. And we also want to talk about Thomas Jefferson writing the Declaration of Independence. And we celebrate Independence Day on July 4th every year. But he did this in 1776. So Independence Hall is again another place. It's a big tourist location. So you can see that's in the old town of Philadelphia. So they fought a few battles at this point. Lexington and Concord is the first, but the next battle that you need to know of is the Battle of Saratoga. So I'm going to search for a place called Saratoga Springs, New York. That's probably the closest city of modern day time. We're going to add that to our map, but we need to change the name to Battle of Saratoga. And this happened September 19th of 1777. So a whole year had gone by since they signed the Declaration of Independence. And this actually was an American loss. I'm going to put barely. But what this battle did is it convinced the French to help the Americans. And this made it, I'm going to put this in all caps, a turning point of the American Revolution. Think about how those French were feeling after the French and Indian War. They lost big time. They lost all kinds of land. And so what we kind of hinted at last time is the French are going to be looking for a way to get back at the British. And they're going to do that by helping out the American colonists try to defeat the British in America's Revolution. So this is huge for the colonists. So even though they lost this battle, it convinced the French that they might actually have a shot at winning this war. And so if the French helped them, they could possibly win. So I want to make this a, let's go ahead and make it a blue battle marker. Even though the British won, it was even bigger that the French joined. So maybe we make that the same color as the French. Part of England's strategy for the war was to create a blockade. And a blockade is going to involve some of the powerful British Navy ships that are going to just kind of park out here in the ocean and patrol these areas and make sure that the colonists aren't getting help from the French, or nothing's coming in and nothing's going out. So I'm going to add a marker out here in the ocean. Just kind of pick a spot, and we're going to name it British Blockade. When I think of blockade ships like this, I think of Pirates of the Caribbean, the huge fleet of the British Army. This is a huge advantage that the British had over the colonists. America's a little tiny baby country. They do not have a navy that can compete with the British. So for the British blockade, I'm going to save the marker, make it red for the British, and when I go to more icons, I'm going to find a tall ship. And then I'm going to add a couple more of these. So the turning point at Saratoga kind of changed the tide for the Americans. But first, before that year was up in 1777, George Washington and his men had to spend the winter at Valley Forge. So I'm going to search for a place called Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And back then, they didn't really fight in the winter. They kind of have their camp, and they hunker down for the winter. I'm going to add this to our map. And we want to make this a blue icon. And I want you to go down to weather and add a snowflake. For a description, you'll want to talk about George Washington's leadership during the harsh winter. I highly recommend you do the DBQ and read those primary source documents, and watch America's Story of Us, that clip on the actual winter, just to see how terrible it was and how many people died, but how they were able to come out of that even stronger because of George Washington's leadership. So I'm going to add a picture because there's a pretty famous one of the Continental Congress coming to see what was going on at Valley Forge, because Washington's trying to get help and money to help his people. So there's Valley Forge. So that is the winter of 1777, so a few months. We're going to fast forward a few years. Again, there's going to be some battles in there, but the only other battle that you need to know is the Battle of Yorktown. That's the last battle of the Revolution. I'm going to search for Yorktown, Virginia. Don't do New York, do Virginia. And it's here on a river. In fact, you can still go visit that. In fact, there's an American Revolution Museum, so it's a pretty cool place to see. We're going to add it to our map, change the title to Battle of Yorktown, and use your book or use your teacher to come up with a good description of this. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this happened on October 19th, 1781. This is the last battle of the Revolution. And since I'm not speaking with a British accent, the Americans won this battle. I'm going to save it and make my icon a blue battle marker. And then I want to zoom out. And you can see that this is actually pretty close to Jamestown. Jamestown was here, and so we know that the Atlantic Ocean is over here. And pretty much the main reason why the colonists were able to win this battle was that we finally got help from the French. So I want to add a marker that shows that, and click my marker tool. And here in the Chesapeake Bay, I'm going to put a marker here that says the French Navy. Remember I said earlier that the colonists didn't have a strong navy, but the French had a better one than we did. And so what the French did is the Navy prevented the British escape from Yorktown. So with what the colonists were able to do on land here, and with the French bringing a Navy ship here, or multiple ships here, the British were stuck and they surrendered. So I'm going to save that. We're going to make it the French blue color and put a tall ship there. And so when you zoom out, that's how the French helped America. America also got some other help from somebody named Bernardo de Galvez. He helped finance the war. You'll learn more about him. But we're going to put a marker for Bernardo in New Orleans. So way out here, out west, we have somebody who's helping. I'm going to add that to map, but I want to name it, his name, Bernardo de Galvez. And you can use page 212 in your book to come up with a good description. I'm going to search for a picture for him. So he was not an American. He sounds Spanish, but you'll hear about that. I want to make his marker a blue $sign because he helped the colonists. Let's see. So we can see where he was located, and he was able to send money and supplies to help the colonists who were extremely short on those things. So that help definitely paid off. And then I said that we didn't have much of a navy earlier, but we did have some fighting going on at sea in the Atlantic. Not all the fighting was done in America. So over here in Europe, kind of south of Ireland and closer to where England is, we're going to put a marker in this light blue area of the Celtic Sea. And we're going to name this John Paul Jones. He's another guy who fought in the Revolution for America that we need to know about. He has a famous quote that you can add to this box. Let's add a picture so you can kind of get an idea of what he was like. He was a Navy guy. And I want to make his icon a tall blue ship. So he actually did some damage up in that area. So we went through our major battles, our major events, some things happening at sea. And it turns out that the American colonists are going to win the war. They're going to defeat the most powerful country in the world at the time and actually win. And so when you win a war, you get stuff. You get land. And we know that they were fighting to keep this. If they lost the war, it would be terrible for them. Who knows what would have happened. So whenever they won the Revolution, they gained not only the colonies, the 13 colonies, but they gained all the land up to the Mississippi River. So we want to map that. And you can pull up page 217 in your book to kind of get an idea of what it was like. We'll add that, look at a map later. But I'm going to use my Add a Line or Shape tool. I'm going to start here in Maine. That was part of Massachusetts at the time. And we want to do this in as few clicks as possible, but still try to be kind of exact. So I'm going to click one time in Maine, spread out, and all of this land is what the colonists are going to gain. I'm going to include the Great Lakes. There's some up here too. everything to the Mississippi River. And the Mississippi River kind of starts up in this area, and it's going to follow this curvy line in between Iowa and Illinois, Missouri, which at the time in 1783, there was not much going on out here besides Native Americans. Come all the way around Louisiana, and we're not going to include Florida because Spain still owns Florida at this point. We're going to come along the coast. And I don't want to make this a line, so I don't want to stop it short. I want to go back to the very first white dot that I clicked on, and that is going to create a polygon shape. I want to name it Treaty of Paris, 1783. And I want you to look at the terms of the treaty and figure out what all it said, why we got the land, what happened to the British, and all these other details. I'm going to add a picture so you can kind of see an actual map. You have to put Treaty of Paris 1783 because there's several treaties named Paris. But here's a good map to look at. So that purpley pink land is now the United States of America. They declared themselves independent, then they had to go fight for it. They won, and because they won, this is now what the United States looks like at this time. So add those terms, and let's make this a green shape, a light green shape. I'm going to reload my page. And so there we go. There's now the United States of America. So we'll continue to tell the story of how this United States that we know of now went from this to this. Thank you.